For billionaires, Johnson is their ideal vehicle because he presents himself as this cheeky chappie who's in touch with the working class against a liberal elite which is out of touch. Actually, he's the billionaire's bitch. That's what he is. Boris the bitch, the billionaire's bitch. What you might call mass popular democracy, which Britain had until very recently, has been replaced to a system of politics which is much more oligarchical. It would be recognized by Donald Trump, by Modi in India, by Vladimir Putin in Russia. The super rich call the shots. Johnson represents a British domesticated version of that. There was a remarkable moment when Johnson's leadership was in the balance, a few hours ahead of the vote, and suddenly you get a letter from a large number of the richest men in Britain, published significantly in Rupert Murdoch's Sun. We are behind Boris 100%, unwavering support for Boris Johnson. In order to make clear that message, they didn't say specifically, we will withdraw our money, but that meant then Nadine Dorries, the culture secretary, goes on live TV.
The Conservative Party donors have said themselves that they aren't going to support the party if the Prime Minister is removed. I think a number of MPs in marginal seats need to hear that and need to understand what they're doing.
And she's saying this to the MPs in marginal seats who need this big donor money in order to be able to sell themselves to their local voters. A massive moment. I don't think we've ever had that kind of direct intervention in British public life from the super rich. And you can see what they want. It's access to power, it's contracts. We saw this with COVID, where Tory donors were rewarded endlessly. You would hope that in a well-managed democracy, the purpose of political power was to challenge the super rich, make sure they didn't get what they wanted. Under Johnson, political power has been a vehicle for the super rich to make sure they do get what they want. The second element of Johnson is that the media class and the political class have merged in Downing Street. They are the same thing. And so all the stuff which we as journalists get taught at journalism school, that it's the task of the press to hold government to account, and there's a sort of separation of powers, is no longer the case. There's been a merger. Murdoch, Associated Newspapers, Telegraph, three big groups which control about something like 70 to 80% of the newspaper reading market. They all backed Johnson to become Tory leader. They all backed him to become Prime Minister, and they all backed him in his moment of crisis, without exception, absolutely crucial to his success in commanding the support of Tory MPs. You can't help but observe that Johnson has had a whole series of policies which help the press, from the COVID subsidy, which you never read about in the newspapers, of course. It's reckoned that more than 100 million has been funneled into the papers. Then there's all sorts of legislation, the undoing of the Leveson reforms. There's a large number of examples of this interrelationship, of staff moving from Downing Street to the Sun and the Mail and back again. Incredible attention which the Prime Minister devotes to meeting the proprietors and the senior executives. And he handles that relationship really well, with a professionalism and an understanding which he doesn't give, of course, to other matters like resolving the legacy issues from Brexit or dealing with the pandemic. And the newspapers must be paying a price for this, because so many of our readers are disgusted by the sense of entitlement and arrogance and criminality in Downing Street, and the repeated lies about it from Johnson and his creatures around him. But the papers are taking that on the chin. It's more important to have their man who are going to serve their interests in Downing Street. That's the judgment they must be making. So this means we have a mutation in British democracy. If you go back to the post-war era, for instance, the days of Attlee, Macmillan, Harold Wilson, even to Thatcher, you have mass political parties, the memberships of several million. Political parties were part of civil society. As the membership collapsed in the 90s and the noughties, you had the rise of a new class of Tory donor, but also Labour donor. Tony Blair used the donors ruthlessly to exclude the trade unions. It raises enormous questions for Keir Starmer. He, advised, it seems, by Tony Blair and people like that, is trying to buy into the Blair model. But remember, the Blair model was quite similar to this. Blair went after big money and the newspaper proprietors in order to defeat the unions. And so is Starmer just going to be a slightly softer version of oligarchical politics, which we now entered, or is he going to be something else? Now, Starmer made a choice after becoming leader, rather dishonestly, because he presented himself as coming from the left. He made a choice to find himself not against Boris Johnson, the billionaire's person. He decided to define himself as not being Jeremy Corbyn. That was the classic Blairite pivot. Blair chose to win by sucking up to Rupert Murdoch and sucking up to the billionaires. And Starmer appears to be doing just the same thing. So all he'll be is maybe a more scrupulous version of Boris Johnson. I wrote to Mr. Starmer about 18 months ago with a dossier of Johnson's lies, suggesting to him that he should challenge Johnson on moral grounds. He should raise the issue of Johnson's lies in the House of Commons. And he wrote a very polite letter back, but he didn't do anything about it. And he, very interestingly, didn't join in with Caroline Lucas and other party leaders in going to the Speaker and raising issues about integrity. He cold-shouldered that. And it does strike one that the way he became Labour leader, making a series of statements he basically reneged on, has held him back from making the full-flanking attack on Johnson, which the country needs. And Starmer could, if he took a principled stand against Johnson and didn't cringe-makingly go after the support of the Murdoch press, I was happy to do without the latest donor in search of contracts. If he challenged the whole system, I think it might be the making of Starmer, but he's not shown any signs that he's really prepared to do that. I spend quite a lot of my time asking how I can reconcile the Boris Johnson, who I worked for when he was editor of The Spectator, with the Prime Minister today. It's quite difficult because Boris Johnson then was a sort of borderline libertarian, cosmopolitan, metropolitan, conservative, very relaxed about immigration. And now we have the Prime Minister in Downing Street who is more and more authoritarian, very darkly racist in some of the language he's used, driven by what is more and more a very ugly desire for power as against principle. Loves to have really indifferent people around him. One of the reasons I really enjoyed working for Boris is that he was very eclectic. He had all sorts of different people from different parts of the Tory party, outside the Tory party. It was a very exciting, lively, generous atmosphere. And if you look at his Downing Street, he surrounds himself with people who almost no talent, but are there because they appeal either to the big donors who now run the Conservative Party or through the party membership whose residual support he still needs, and they tend to be quite right-wing, very right-wing in some cases. And although what the outsider looking at Johnson sees as a buffoon, they see him as sort of amiable but clueless, that is not the case. He has a very firm grasp of where power lies, which I didn't really ever spot. And his Tory party has developed themes which developed in New Labour under Tony Blair and then under Cameron's Tories, but he's really systematised them, which is to make the Tory party the party of billionaire money, of the donors, and secondly, of the press barons. Boris Johnson's Conservative Party is not, in my view, the Conservative Party which has governed Britain for 200 near years. It's really more like a Orbanist party or a Trump party. There's lots of elements of Trump's Republicans now. It's a new method of government in Britain. Very interesting case in the leadership election when one Tory MP, they're not very bright, these Tory MPs, they don't really know what they're saying, but one MP revealed that he'd been offered a bung in his constituency in order to vote for the Johnson leadership. It shows naivety on two levels. One, of course, Johnson probably won't deliver on the bung. And secondly, it smells very much like corruption. The use of the state to reward supporters, the politics of cronyism and pork barrel. Very dangerous. It's dismantling the Britain that he's inherited. And I speak, by the way, as a conservative, because Johnson is not a conservative. He's got the name conservative. He has the machinery of the Conservative Party. What he's doing is not conservative. It's something else. He's moving towards a form of authoritarianism, tax freedoms, tax institutions of the state. It's far right and it's very dangerous. No conservative should support this. If you look at the mainstream media now, they are unable and unwilling to cover so many really important issues in a generous-hearted way which embraces all points of view. There's increasing need for independent media. You should consider joining Double Down News on Patreon.